All right, thank you, John. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you all for being here. I am Colleen Sullivan, CEO and co-founder of CMT Digital. CMT Digital is a subsidiary of the CMT Group, which is a 23-year-old proprietary trading and investments firm headquartered here in Chicago. We're just about 80 people. We also have 2 offices in London and 1 in Frankfurt. We've traded in the traditional equities and commodities markets in the United States, Europe, South America, and Asia. Have also done quite a bit of venture and private equity investing. CMT Digital is focused solely on the crypto space. We have legal policy engagement, proprietary trading desk, and venture investing. But given that many of you guys are interns in the financial services space, I thought I would tell you a little bit about how I got to where I am today. So it all started with my uncle giving me a t-shirt that said, "Junk bonds keep America fit." My first reaction was, that is a super weird gift for a 10-year-old girl's birthday. And my second reaction was, what is a junk bond? I was a very, very curious kid, so I started asking a lot of questions, and I came to find out that my uncle worked for this guy, Mike Milken, at Drexel Burnham on some bond trading desk. And that was really the start of it. I just kept asking questions and was pretty fascinated with the markets, reading books, everything I could do. My dad was a basketball coach on the South Side, and as my Irish luck would have it, one of his former basketball players got a job with this company called First Options, which was a big brokerage firm at the Chicago Board Options Exchange. He got me an internship there when I was a teenager, and that happened pretty much simultaneous with this guy Mike Milken being indicted for insider trading, which then drove my curiosity into, well, what is an indictment? What's insider trading? What's racketeering? What are illicit profits? And what are these securities rules this guy is going down for? So anyway, it was this combination of trading and the legal environment. So I ended up spending every summer with First Options from then until I graduated from law school. I was a runner, I was a phone clerk, I was a clerk in the IBM pit, I was a clerk in the OEX and SPX pits. I did it all, and then eventually I made it to the big leagues in the legal department. So as you can imagine, I met a lot of traders during my time on the floor, and when I graduated from law school, I did something a little risky for a lawyer and decided to co-found a startup. When I was in the IBM pit, it became pretty clear to me that high net worth executives would hedge their employee stock option risk by going to the big banks like Goldman and Citi, and they would put on a collar or sell calls against that position to protect their assets. And my co-founders and I thought, well, don't regular employees need those strategies even more than these high net worth people? Why don't we bring them to the floor where it's more transparent and efficient, and we'll teach them these same hedging and monetization strategies? So we decided to start a firm, raise some funds, and one of my first investors was actually the CMT Group, which is how I met the 2 founders who are my partners today, 19 years ago. So we had one problem, though. We needed the Securities and Exchange Commission to approve a rule that would allow people with vested employee stock options to use them as good collateral in listed option hedging transactions. We had an all-star group of exchanges that supported us. We had the support of the Chicago Board Options Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, and the International Securities Exchange, which was later acquired by NASDAQ. So we go to the SEC in 2000, the Division of Trading and Markets, to formally propose this rule change. And this is what happened. Let's see. So this is a Wall Street Journal article covering the approval change, but that's not what's important about this. I'll have you take a look at the date. So it took the SEC 9 years to approve this rule change, 9 years, and it effectively killed our startup. It taught me a lot of lessons early in my career about not building a business on a fragile legal foundation. During the time I was waiting for the SEC, I ended up going to work for Sidley Austin, spent some time there, left there in 2004 and joined CMT. I eventually became a partner at CMT in 2013, which coincided with the time I read the Bitcoin white paper and again became really, really curious. What is this autonomous technology that can potentially democratize money, and how are our regulators and politicians going to react, and how are our legal frameworks going to keep up? So quick side note, we now know how they're going to react. So as many of you probably know, Facebook recently announced the launch of a new crypto asset called Libra. And just in the last week, we've had President Trump tweet about Bitcoin. He thinks it comes out of thin air. We've had, the Secretary of the Treasury hold a surprise crypto conference. We've had Powell comment on it. So it's a very interesting time to be in crypto. So anyway, in 2013, my first act as a partner was to go to the two founders of CMT and say, I think the firm should invest in Bitcoin. Not a smart move is my first partner act. At the time, Bitcoin, was not trading on any regulated exchanges. It was not a regulated product, and it had some reputational issues. The partners were not very fond of that idea at that time. However, they were supportive of me getting involved in the legal and regulatory kind of early days discussions on crypto. So this is some of the work that we've done. So that was the very kind of not too exciting genesis of CMT Digital, was early engagement on the legal and policy side. Fast forward to January of 2016 is when the firm decided to invest in Bitcoin. We then launched a full crypto trading desk January of 2017. So we trade globally on spot and derivatives crypto exchanges. And then we started investing in the space in the fall of 2017. We have 18 portfolio companies. These are all operating companies in the crypto blockchain space. And then most recently this year in January, we launched an initiative called CMT Digital Labs. The purpose of that is really, this technology is not changing daily. It's changing by the second. So we felt we needed to be intentional about setting up an initiative where we're sort of dog-fooding these technologies. The goal is to become better investors, to find projects to invest in, and also hopefully to use some of these technologies internally. And I'm happy to talk more about, our business later. But in the remaining time that I have, I thought I would talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the venture investing space and just how that is, how the legal environment for crypto assets is impacting us there. So these are some of our portfolio companies. Hopefully some of you guys recognize at least some of the names on there. Bakkt is a subsidiary of the Intercontinental Exchange. But there's two things that we've noticed since we started investing. And we've noticed the legal environment for crypto becoming more and more clear in jurisdictions outside of the United States. So like you go to Switzerland, you know the rules of the road. You know what this asset is, you know how it's going to be treated, you know what you need to do to comply. On the other hand, we've seen the rules for crypto in the United States becoming less and less clear and more uncertain. And what's happening is we now see startups doing two things: leaving the United States altogether and excluding US customers and US investors, or they decide they do not want to use their seed round to engage lawyers in the United States, pay for money transmitter licensing. Instead, they want to find out if their product works and they want to build it. So they go offshore United States to do that, and then if and only if they think the US is an important market for them, they'll raise another round, come back here, and deal with all the regulatory mess that we currently have. I'll use the internet as a quick analogy here. So if we had overregulated the internet, which we had ample opportunity to do, I'm old enough to remember, we would obviously have not participated in that technology as we did from an economic and importantly a security setting standards standpoint. And that is the risk we run here, is if we don't get the regulatory environment right, we will not participate in this new asset class like we did with the internet. And depending on your view of the potential for this technology, that I think could actually be a threat to national security. So one of my favorite quotes, Steve Jobs, is innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And the United States has always been a leader in innovation. But if startups in this space have to wait up to 9 years for regulatory clarity like my startup did, the United States is going to find itself in the unfamiliar position of being a follower. It is very easy when you're dealing with digital assets that are borderless to move your servers to a jurisdiction where there's regulatory clarity and a more welcoming environment. So I'm going to leave you guys with a couple things that helped me along the way, and maybe they'll help you. All right, so my dad used to always say this to me, nothing I say today is going to teach me anything, so if I'm going to learn, I must do it by listening. So I find I learn a lot more when I shut up and I listen. That has been a valuable lesson. And then being a lifelong learner, being so curious about the technology, I ended up going to coding school in 2015, which was like the most humbling experience ever, because I was like the oldest person by 20 years. Number 2, say I don't know. So if you don't know something, just say you don't know it. The consequences of acting like you do know something that you don't can be very detrimental. Subject matter expertise. It's great to be a generalist. You want to be well-rounded. But what I have found in my career is that having deep subject matter expertise in some topic has been very useful. So for example, we would not have entered the crypto space as early as we did if I didn't have the experience I had in commodities, securities, derivatives law. Take risks and fail, and the Mike Milken, Satoshi Nakamoto curiosity rule. So obviously my startup failed. But through that failure, I met CMT, where I am today, and I also learned so much about the regulatory environment, which is what drove us to have these early discussions in the crypto regulatory area. And then obviously, if I hadn't been curious about Mike Milken, I wouldn't have ended up on the floor. If I hadn't been curious about the Bitcoin white paper, I wouldn't be doing what I do today. The last one is the heartbeat rule, which sounds a little bit weird. But I encourage you, whenever you provide any type of work product, whether it's an email or a presentation like this, take a minute to consider that I'm asking, you guys, the recipients, not only to use like your minutes or your hours for this presentation, I'm asking you to use your heartbeats. And we are all extremely limited in how many of those we have during this lifetime. So you want to make sure you ask people to spend their heartbeats wisely. Thank you.
We read dozens of news sources, so you only have to read one. John Lothian News.